Hey guys, today we want to talk about 4 costly mistakes that you can make when you're applying for disability insurance. But if today's your first time joining us, welcome. My name is Michael Foley. I'm a certified financial planner and certified student loan professional, and I'm also the son of 2 doctors. And Lifestyle Creep's all about helping healthcare workers, be intentional with their finances and really help them to live more humble and quiet lives. But let's dive in. So, when we're looking for disability insurance, oftentimes you're getting berated with emails of other advisors and people, salesy emails telling you that the world is going to fall on you if you don't get your disability insurance before you finish your training or once you graduate, you got to get your coverage. So let's break it down and look at some things to watch out for when you're going through that application process. Okay. So the first thing is not knowing what definitional language is in the contract. I think the first thing that we got to look at is how are they defining you being disabled in this contract that you're applying for? Everyone thinks that you either have disability insurance or you don't have disability insurance, but that's not the case. Disability insurance is very gray, and the crux of any policy is in that definitional language of how do they define you being disabled in that contract. And so it ranges anything from any occupation all the way up to true own occupation. So as a CFP, our only recommendation for you as a certified financial planner is going to be for our physician clients, our dental clients to have that highest level called the true own occupation. And so in an any occupation definitional language policy, that they would read something to the effect of, if you become disabled and can't work, we'll pay out a benefit, right? But that means that you can't work in any occupation, right? So if you can't work in general, then they'll pay out. But what if you're a highly skilled, highly trained physician or dentist, and you can't, you hurt your hand and maybe you can't do surgery, you can't practice, in the same way that you have? They're not going to pay out in any occupation, but they would in a true own occupation policy. So that's where we really want to make sure that we're being thoughtful in what type of coverage do we have. And in that true own occupation definitional language, it'll say something to the effect of, if you can't do the substantial and material duties of your specified occupation in which you're doing at the time of disability, then they'll pay out. So that's a huge thing. And we also kind of call it a double dip own occupation, because technically, if let's say you're a surgeon and you hurt your hands, you can't do surgery, but they have to pay you if you can't do your job that you were doing. You're practicing clinically at that time, but let's say you can still go and teach at the medical school. Well, that's not what you were doing at the time of disability, so they still have to pay you. So really, really important, the definitional language. Can't stress that enough. Make sure when you're shopping out these coverages, there's really only 6 companies on the market that are offering it these days. So make sure you're shopping it all out and seeing what the cost difference is and the nuances between those policies. Okay. So what is the second thing that you want to be looking at? A lot of times what we'll see is people getting what's called a graded premium. And so if we get a graded premium quote, what that means is that they're quoting you oftentimes a lot lower rate when you first look at the policy, which looks great. And so it looks like it's a lot cheaper policy. Maybe you get more coverage for less. It's a true own occupation policy, which is awesome. But a lot of times what we don't see is that graded, it means that it's going to go up in future years. And so we typically see that a graded premium, although might be helpful during residency or during your first few years, you're going to end up paying a substantial amount more money at the end of the day as compared to just a level premium. So we oftentimes recommend that our clients get a level premium that's just going to stay fixed, right? And we want to make sure that is going to stay there. And if you want to add more on top, you can do that. But that same amount of coverage should stay the same price throughout the entire time that you have that contract. So really important that we're knowing the difference between graded versus level. Okay. So the next is, really looking at a lot of times when you have to go through this, we want to make sure that you're not applying without a medical preliminary review. So a lot of people don't realize how scrutinous they are in the medical underwriting. So they got to make sure that you're healthy. And if you have anything that might predispose you to be having a disability in the future, they're going to be very quick to put an exclusion on the policy or change your rate on the policy, okay? Or outright deny you is another thing. So about 40% of our clients are getting either completely denied or getting some sort of exclusion put on the policy. And so what I mean by an exclusion is, let's say you have maybe you had an ACL injury way back in high school, and haven't had any issues from it, but there was an injury there. They might find that in your medical history and say, hey, we're going to exclude your left knee from coverage. So if you have a disability in the future, but because of the stem of it was from your left knee, we're not going to pay out, but we'll cover anything else. So we're just going to exclude your left knee from coverage. So we see that all the time, especially in the mental health domain. They're very quick to put there's any history of that. So if you do have health history or things that might be concerning, make sure you go get a medical prelim. A lot of agents, like we'll run clients through, and we have direct connection with the underwriters, so we can say, hypothetically speaking, if we had a client that's age 32 and in this specialty with this medical, history, how would you rate them? So we can, preliminarily look to see if they're going to give you a good rating before you actually go and get an official declaration on your record. Okay. So once you have that, you're denied, then that could hurt you in other areas, as we'll talk about in just a second too. Okay. So the fourth thing that we have to look at is, costly mistake is not researching to see if you have a guaranteed standard issue program, or what we call a GSI, through your university. So if you're in a residency or fellowship program, a lot of the universities are now having advisors come in, and they can offer a policy that gives you access to getting true own occupation definitional language, but not having to go through the traditional underwriting process, meaning they don't have to look at your health history in the past. So the big thing now is that if you have gone and applied with another company, and then all of a sudden you get denied, or maybe you get an exclusion put on your policy, or maybe you get halfway through the policy and even just pull out of the policy because you found out that you have the GSI, they are now going to have a 5-year look back. So if you've applied for coverage in the last 5 years and got rated, got an exclusion, or even just started the application and stopped it, they're going to knock you out of even having eligibility for the guaranteed standard issue program. So it's really important that if you do have access to one, we oftentimes recommending applying there first, and at least seeing if you can get a policy in place. And then if there's other options that might look better for you on the market, well, you can always apply after you have that coverage, but don't shoot yourself in the foot if you apply for the other company before looking to see if you have a GSI in place. Okay, so big things that can be really costly mistakes that just crush our hearts when we see clients make these mistakes. And so make sure that you're seeking counsel on this, and hopefully this has been helpful to help you to live more humbly and inspire you to live more confidently in your finances. So thanks again for joining, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks so much.